Tuesday. This has been a wonderful time of training and learning with various speakers and different folks. Today is another very special day. Today I introduce to some and present to others. You don't know, I don't call you Dr. Bishop, the money man, Art Rhodes, who is the president and CEO of the Church of God Benefits Board in Cleveland, Tennessee. And I thought, as one of the things that Teaching Tuesday hopes to do, one of the things that I've been hoping to do with Teaching Tuesday is to bring to you, whether you be laity or leader, skills, tips, trainings that I think will help us do effective ministry. And Brother Art Rhodes is a wonderful resource here in the Church of God, great friend. I've served with him on a couple of committees, and it's always amazing that we always need Art to keep us out of trouble. So that's another reason I have Art here today, because it's gonna help keep us out of trouble. But Art's job at the Benefits Board, and we'll give him a chance to just introduce himself, is to help through the Church of God, this wonderful program for retirement and other things. And so today we're gonna ask a few questions, but before we get started, Mr. Art Rhodes, introduce yourself to the wonderful people who may be on the Zoom call and as well on the Facebook Live.
Well, Bishop, it is an incredible pleasure of mine to be with you. You are one of my favorite people. Even my wife even talks about you all the time because she just loves to be around you and to enjoy your sense of humor. So it is an incredible opportunity for me to be with you today during this Teaching Tuesday. So maybe I'm going to learn something from you today, hopefully. But I am Art Rhodes, and Art is fine. All those other titles, we don't need to worry about all that stuff. But I'm a Church of God preacher's kid. Grew up and went to law school and had a great time practicing law, and then God took me in a little bit different direction and wound up in Washington, D.C. for well over a decade. And then when I felt like I was headed into the business world to make a lot of money and just enjoy life, God then took me on a different detour, and I ended up here at the Church of God Benefits Board 21 years ago now.
Wow.
And that's just amazing to me. But 21 years ago, this past February, I came to the Benefits Board and came here. The retirement plan was about $80 million at that time, which was a great size retirement plan. But over the last 21 years, the Lord has helped us to grow that plan to over $400 million today.
Wow.
And so that's why when I came here, I had hair and it was basically black, and today it is basically gone. So, and what is left is great. But God has been a great blessing to us here at the Benefits Board. And for those of you who don't know, we basically manage the retirement plan for the Church of God. That's our primary business. We do a lot of training concerning tax issues and retirement issues and financial planning, and I'm sure we'll talk about some of those things today. But our goal is to basically provide the resources to our ministers and to our churches to help them do their job better. We're kind of the back door, the back office of a local church or a state office. We're kind of providing the services that nobody sees, and that's kind of the way we like it, because we want you to be able to take care of those frontline ministry things that you can only do. I can't preach. My wife, again, says I preach to her, but she doesn't like my sermons, and she hasn't taken up an offering for me yet either. But the Lord gives us the ability to try to come in, help churches, assist them either with their financial plannings, their budgeting, and even we have a mortgage company here that makes mortgages to churches. So all of those things are what we try to do to support the work of the kingdom. And again, for the last 21 years, God's given me the opportunity to be here and work with some incredible people. Most people see me, but they don't see all the wonderful folks who are here at the Benefits Board every day, carrying on work for them and serving them. And so I just give all the credit to those folks and to God's great blessings upon us. And again, Bishop, it is a wonderful opportunity of mine to be with you. As you say, we've worked on a lot of committees together, and my job is always to say no. That's what they call me, Dr. No, most of the time. So just trying to keep people out of trouble, and sometimes they don't appreciate it, I guess.
Well, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. And, you know, one of the things that this Teaching Tuesday is really centered around is helping pastors and even laity understand the financial landscape that we're in. As you know, we had something that I know I'd never seen in my life with this global pandemic that caused the economy and churches to shut down. And now we're trying to come out of it, and we're still trying to figure that out. Let me ask this question. This is a standard question I've asked everyone. When did you realize that the pandemic or some version of this pandemic may have an effect on what you do? And when did you kind of say, hey, I'm gonna have to kind of pay a little more attention to this? At what point, what you're doing?
Well, you know, that's a great question because, as you know, Bishop, I was traveling in Israel during those first couple of days of March with several members of the executive committee and about 75 folks, really, from the Church of God around the world. We were in Israel on the journey of Pentecost, and my wife and I had decided to go on that trip, and it's just a trip of a lifetime. But I guess it would have been maybe March, it was a Monday, March the 9th, I believe, maybe was the day when I saw the stock market begin to react to all of the issues that were going on out there. And I recall very well, I was on the bus as we were traversing across Israel, headed through the valley there. And I was looking at my phone, seeing what was happening in the stock market, not only in the U.S., but globally, how the markets were beginning to respond. And what we had heard was this virus that was deadly, but we didn't really know the consequences, that was coming out of Asia. All of a sudden now was beginning to affect the whole world, and not only from a health standpoint, but from a financial standpoint. And I said, you know, it's probably time for me to go home. And it just so happened we were leaving that afternoon, that night. And immediately, as you know, Israel started shutting down, because when they saw this virus spreading, they began to clamp down everything. And so here we were, 75 folks there, Church of God folks, trying to get out of Israel. And we ended up, literally, our group was on 2 or 3 different flights. And those were the last ones out of Israel before they shut down everything. So for those of you who've been to Israel, you know it's kind of scary anyway going through the airport there. But when you're going through the airport and you're the only people in there, it's even more scary. So I guess that was the beginning of me saying, you know what, we've got a situation here that's bigger than just a healthcare issue. And again, within, I guess, a couple of days after that, maybe the 12th or so, is when the World Health Organization declared this was a pandemic because of the massive spread. And from that day, we made the decision here at the Benefits Board, because we have a building that has everybody in the office has their own door and can shut their door and all those things. Because of the critical nature of what was happening in the markets, and because our participants were calling and going, my goodness, what's happening to my retirement account? And, you know, am I going to lose everything? we made the decision to continue to work during the crisis. And in retrospect, that was a very tough decision for me to ask our folks to say, will you continue to come in and work? But in reality, they will tell you today it was the right decision for them, but it was also the right decision for our participants, because we were able to answer in real time those participants' questions. We did implement all of our continuity plan and disaster plan and all that to make sure that we could respond if we were to have someone in the office come down sick. We were able to do all that. We're still able to do all that. We tested all those systems. But being able to be here, being able to talk with you and talk with pastors in your state and in your region and pastors across the country by Zoom, a wonderful technology, gave us the opportunity to try to quelch some of that fear that was out there. And a lot of this, as you know, has just been driven by fear.
You know, and one of the things that part of this discussion, that fear of the unknown, one of the things that you just mentioned, and one of the reasons I definitely wanted you to be on, is you kind of keep your eye on the market. And so the market tumbles very, very hard in March. And one of the things that I'm trying to maybe kind of inform our body on is, how should we be prepared, kind of baseline for retirement and just life in general. Now, let me make this disclaimer, so I want to be clear. You know, I don't claim to be a financial planner, and so this is just general advice. If you want other questions, call Art personally. If you have another financial advisor, please do share with them and look into them. And the reason I brought this up, Brother Art, because now we do have Dave Ramsey, we have Susie Orman, we have even old Larry Burkett stuff, that I'm starting to hear people ask, well, who's right, who's wrong, how does this work? So first off, how should we respond kind of generally to the market? Just kind of a baseline, if we're in it at all.
Well, we probably gonna have to call somebody else to answer that question. I think you have asked the question, though, Bishop, that we all are asking ourselves, and that is, what should we have done to have been better prepared for this? And we've asked ourselves that as a staff. We've asked that as our board. Our board of directors met by this same means a couple of weeks ago. And we went down that same road with that kind of discussion of what should we have done differently to prepare for this. And I guess and we're looking at it from an investment standpoint, but that goes to the same way of churches, of what should they have done to prepare for this kind of event. And to be perfectly honest, I don't think, and we can go back now and people are running different videos and other things of where people had predicted pandemics and those kind of things, but I'm not really convinced that anybody saw something of this type actually happening. Now, we in the financial world have talked about a geopolitical event for years, and a geopolitical event to us was something like 9/11. Nobody saw something like that occurring, and you have this terrorist type event, and it basically shatters the markets, and the markets shut down for several days, and there's this financial chaos. And so while we have talked about geopolitical events, we haven't talked about, I don't think a pandemic has come out of my mouth. That word has come out of my mouth until we are in one. You know, it's kind of like the guy saying, you know, the first football game he played in. That's kind of the same deal that we've seen here. So I think what we have to do to answer your question is we have to kind of step back and say, what if something like this occurs again? And I'll just tell you, Bishop Pelt, I guess I am more concerned today that we may have a reoccurrence of this virus again as we begin to come back together. Most people that know me know that I'm overly cautious, and sometimes my wife says I'm pessimistic, and my staff would tell you that as well. They'll say, you're just always looking for the bad things, and I guess I am, because that's the nature of my job. I'm trying to figure out where are the roadblocks here, what's going to be the stumbling blocks. And I am concerned that we could have a reoccurrence of this virus, and we could have an escalation again of it. And the question is from a financial standpoint, what do we do? You know, the government has stepped in this time, and whether you are supportive of what they've done or not, and this is not a political statement, but it was bipartisan, stimulus bills and all those things. They literally spent almost $4 trillion in less than 60 days. That's a lot of money. And when you think of that, and most of us, when we say trillion, we don't even know how many zeros are in that.
Yeah.
But if you think about that, that $4 trillion equals almost what we would spend as a government in a whole year for everything. Social Security, military, everything. That's almost what we would spend in a year, but they spend it in basically a 60-day window of time to keep the economy going. So we got things like the Paycheck Protection Bill. We got the $1,200 stimulus bills. We got those kind of things. And it's created a pretty interesting dynamic, because as you talk to pastors within the COCO office area, a lot of them will say, you know what, our giving is actually up. And now there are those that are out there. There's some that have had a terrible decline. We've got some churches that have had up to an 80% decline in giving during this crisis. But on the other hand, we've got some that have seen an increase in giving. Well, Art, how do you explain that? Well, think about this for a second, and I'm going to get back to answering your question. But you remember, I'm a lawyer, so I get paid by the word, so I got to use up a whole lot. But think about this for a second. We send everybody that basically has a Social Security number over the age of 18 and has filed a tax return, we send them $1,200 from the government. We send every child under 17 $500. That's number one. Then for those who are unemployed, we've now had by tomorrow or Thursday, we will have had probably somewhere, we're right now 42.5 million people have already applied for unemployment. By Thursday, that number will increase to probably somewhere around 44 million people total. And around 22 million of those are still drawing. So about half are still drawing continuing unemployment benefits. But think about this. We took unemployment benefits and added $600 a week, not a month, $600 a week to that unemployment check through these stimulus bills. So in Florida, most of your folks are getting more than that. I don't know what the average unemployment check was in Florida before, but in Tennessee, which is one of the lowest paying states where I live, it was about $325 a week. I think Florida is way more than that, probably double that. But in Tennessee, a person drawing $325 a week unemployment now is drawing $925 a week. Now, was it necessary? Yes, we had to do something to keep this economy going. But what we have done is we've created a disincentive for people to go back to work. And so, but the good part and I say that almost hesitantly, because the good part of that is that most of those people feel real blessed and they've been paying their tithes. And so for that, we're thankful. And that's why we've seen some churches that's maintained their giving level. So back to your question of how do we prepare for it? Could we ever have seen this coming and prepared for it? And the answer is probably no, but these are the things that you should have been prepared for in any kind of crisis, whether it's a pandemic, a geopolitical crisis, a healthcare crisis in your own home or your own family. You should have, number one, at least 6 months worth of income set aside in savings, preparing for a rainy day.
Say that again. Say that again.
6 months. You should have 6 months set aside, and this is personally and for your church. You should have 6 months set aside to cover your basic necessities of life for 6 months. You should have that set aside in savings. So a church, if you've got a light bill, water bill, typical utilities, and a mortgage payment, you should have that much money set aside, at least 6 months, to weather a storm like this. Now, had most of our churches had that, we wouldn't have needed a PPP program, a paycheck protection program. If most of us individually had had that, we wouldn't have needed a stimulus check. Now, they're wonderful and a blessing. But as a nation, we live, and as churches, we live paycheck to paycheck. You know, we can't wait till the first of the month or the end of the week or every 2 weeks to get our paycheck, because now we can breathe. The problem is when we get our paycheck and we write our bills, we're like, oh my Lord, I ain't got enough money to last to the end of the month now. And that's the way we're living, and God did not intend for us to do that. He intended for us to live in abundance, both in our monetary aspect and in our spiritual aspect. He wants us to have the abundance of His grace and mercy. So taking simple steps, and you may say, well, goodness, Art, you're talking about me setting aside 6 months, and that, you know, my monthly bills may be $5,000. You're talking about $30,000. That's more money than I can think about. Well, it's, again, I said earlier, my dad was a preacher. He passed away about 10 years ago. But one of the things he always taught me is that you don't eat an elephant all at once. You eat him one bite at a time. And that's the same way here with setting aside money. Begin to set aside a little bit at a time. Don't think about the big number. Think about, you know what, I can set aside $100 this month, and I'm going to put that in savings, and I'm not going to touch it. I'm not going to go buy that bass boat I've been looking at, or that four-wheeler I'd like to have. And I know I'm stepping on some toes there, even on my own, but I understand that. But the point is, start setting aside some money and planning for something like this. Again, I'm pessimistic, but I don't think this is going to be the last time we have to face a crisis like this. I am concerned that we may have to face more crises from both a financial, a health, and probably even a spiritual side.
That's good. Let me ask you that. That's a good segue. So now, if we were to go, if we were building a house, we got a 6 month saving. One of the things that a lot of my ministers are bivocational. They work for someone. They work for a program that may have a retirement. What advice would you give them for them to how would they manage their retirement, and even with being a pastor? Matter of fact, before you answer that, can you explain how one can become a member of the Church of God Benefits Board? Because I always try to make sure I let people know, and then I'll come back. So we'll hit that one first, and then we'll come back to that second question. So how can one become a member of the Church of God Benefits Board?
It is extremely simple. All you have to do is go to benefitsboard.com. So benefitsboard.com on your phone, on your computer, benefitsboard.com, and there's a box right in the middle of the page that says join the plan. You click on that box, and literally, if you're a slow typer, in about 7 or 8 minutes, you can be a member of the retirement plan. If you're a fast typer, in about 3 or 4 minutes, you'll be a member of the plan. It's that simple. All we're going to ask for is some basic information about you and your address and different things. And then you'll have the opportunity to make investment selections, and we've got 4 different selections you can choose from. And then we're going to follow up with you, ask for your beneficiaries in case you were to pass away, who's going to get your retirement account. And those things are critically important because this money is yours. Once you start putting the money in there, Bishop Pelt can't get your money. I can't get your money. Now, he'd like to, and I'd like, but no, I was kidding. If you want to name us as your beneficiaries, we'll be your sons and daughters in the Lord. But no, just kidding. But the point is, you get to name who you want to get your account. And, you know, I hate to even use this example, but if at some point you were to lose your credentials or you no longer work for the Church of God, that money is still yours. It's not anybody else's. It stays your money. And for that, you are allowed to name your beneficiaries. If something happens to you, you pass away, then your children will get your funds. I've just gone through that. My dad, as I said, was a minister. He passed away 10 years ago. My mom inherited his account, and my mom just passed away about 3 weeks ago. And so what was stored up by my dad years ago is now passing to me and my sister. It's not a lot, but again, it's an inheritance that my dad has passed on to me, and he's been deceased now for over 10 years.
Now, matter of fact, the 2 questions so again, thank you for everyone watching. If you're on the Zoom call, you know you can always go to chat, put your question in. If you're on Facebook Live, I want you to know, you'll see me kind of looking away, but we have Facebook Live, and we got a wonderful question. One of the questions that came up was, do you have to be a minister to be a member of the benefits board? And then what's the lowest amount you can have to start the account?
Well, great questions. Number one, you do not have to be a minister, but you do have to work for a Church of God entity. So you have to be working either for a church or a church college or a church office or something of that nature. Church school, if you work for a Church of God school, you can still participate in the plan. So you have to be tied to an employer that is Church of God. And for that, we get some very special benefits because we are considered to be a church retirement plan. And for that, our ministers, if you think about this for a second, our ministers get to contribute to the plan and don't have to pay taxes on their money. So let me just use an example. If you make $100, the Church of God minutes, which are our governing body, says that the church should contribute $10 to your account. Sometimes the church doesn't have the money to do that, but if they do, they should be contributing. But if the church doesn't have the money and you want to contribute out of your own $100, you could say, I want $5 out of my 100 to go in the retirement account. Then you only pay taxes on $95. So, and if the church contributes 10, now you've got $15 going into the retirement account and only paying taxes. You're getting $110 worth of benefits, but only paying taxes on 95. That money goes into your account. It grows over the years, hopefully a lot. And then as a minister in retirement, you get to take that money out, and we designate it under the current law as ministerial housing allowance. So you get to use as much of that money as possible for your housing costs and don't have to pay any taxes at all in retirement on that money. So it's the best of all worlds for our ministers. Now, for our non-ministers, you get that tax benefit on the front end. You don't have to pay taxes on it. But when it does come out in retirement, for people like me who are not ministers, I'm going to have to pay taxes on it. But the good thing is I've gotten a whole bunch of growth out of that, and hopefully my tax liability will probably be less in retirement than it was while I was working. So there's some tremendous benefits there. Now, how much do you have to put in? What if, I can put in $100 from salary this month, and man, next month you know, the kids have got to have braces, or my children are going to college and I need a little extra money for that. I can't afford to. What's going to happen? Do I have to put in a certain amount every month? And the answer is no. We want you to get started. We would encourage you to contribute at least $25 a month. Now, you may not be able to afford that. You may be able to afford only $10 or $5. Just get started. What I would say is once you get started, we are matching the first $500 you contribute. So if you join the plan today at benefitsboard.com, clicking on that join the plan button, and you start contributing, and you contribute up to any amount, up to $500, we're going to match it dollar for dollar this year. So if you put in $500, you'll have $1,000 at the end of the year. That's a good deal. Anytime you can double your money, you need to do that.
And again, this is something that if you guys, and once again, those watching on Facebook Live, those on the Zoom call, I have really tried my best to make sure I think we brought Art at least 2 or 3 times in a row to let you know that I'm concerned that we do get systematic about this. This pandemic has reminded us that you don't have control of the seasons, but you do have control of your seed. And you need to be doing some things, I think, proactively to ensure that you have seed no matter the season. Brother Art, you've kind of started to build this foundation. So we got 6 months saving, but I'm bivocational. I'm a pastor. My church may be doing something, but I work at a job, and my job allows me to, I guess it's a 401k. Should I be in both, or is a 401k and what we have the same thing? What's the difference in how would you kind of say, hey man, you might want to consider this as a pastor?
Well, number one, 401ks and our plan, the minister's retirement plan, is called a 403B. Initially, 401ks were for profit businesses. So if you work for Walmart or a big corporation, you were in a 401. If you work for a nonprofit, you were in a 403. Now, over the years, the distinctions between those two have become less and less. There are still some great advantages. That tax advantage for ministers that I just talked about of getting their money out as housing allowance in retirement is a huge advantage of a plan like the minister's retirement plan. So there are some advantages of a 403 over a 401. But in your situation of a minister that's bivocational that has the opportunity of a 401, and as a minister has the opportunity of 403, he or she could be in both plans if they so desire. What I would always suggest is if your employer, your secular employer, your day-to-day job, it has a 401 plan and they are matching anything for that plan, you need to contribute to the point that you can get the full match. And I see people every day, bivocational ministers, who are working for an employer, and that employer says, we'll match up to 3% of your contributions, and they just don't do it. And I'm like, whoa, you need to be doing that. That is free money. Mm-hmm. So if I give $3, they're going to match $3. You know, they're going to match up to 3% of my salary, whatever that is. So out of every $100, if I put in $3, they match $3. I've just got $103 worth of benefit out of working for that company for only a tax liability of $97. That's a tremendous advantage always. So always contribute to that employer plan as much as you can to get the match, always that much. And sometimes you may want to contribute more. On the other hand, as a bivocational minister, your church needs to experience the obligation of helping you prepare for retirement. And I talk about this a lot, but a church has an obligation to you not only to take care of you today, because what does the scripture say? That a laborer is worthy of his hire. Worthy of his hire. And so that is not only for now, that's also taking care of you for the future. So don't say to your church, yeah, we got money in the bank and all, but don't worry about my retirement. I got a little retirement over here at my secular job. No, they need the responsibility of helping you prepare for retirement. Because you know what? If you don't do that, the next guy's going to come in and get yours and his too. So you need to be making sure that you get your portion of that retirement. Encourage the church to give it. It's a part of taking care of you both now and in the future. And join the retirement plan, the minister's retirement plan, as well as your secular plan, and contribute as much as you can. I have never, ever, in my 21 years of being here, and in 11 years prior to that, working in Washington on Capitol Hill, working on pension legislation and other things, I have never, ever heard someone say to me, you know what, I got too much money in my retirement account. I have never heard them say that. I keep waiting for somebody to say that, but I've never heard them say it. So how much do you need? At least $1 more than you got.
That's good. And, again, to those watching, this is the reason we do Teaching Tuesday, because as your bishop, I've noticed that we just don't know. We don't know. I think we're nervous. It's so funny. I tell people that my lovely wife is watching. I think she's on one of these, either on the Zoom call. But my wife is my financial advisor.
She's a good one at that.
Yeah, she's the secret service of the funds in the house, and so it's a secret, and it's a secret. I don't know where the money is, but we make a little running joke, and I make a running joke that because she is a lot more disciplined than I am, I will not be broke. But she kind of thinks the same way. You go, listen, how much money do we need? $1 more than what we need. So because she goes, with you, I won't need an extra $1 to take some medicine. But let me ask this question, because another question came up on the on Facebook Live. What if can a spouse of a minister join the benefits board, or does the husband, as the minister, is he the only one that can join?
Well,
or if it's the husband of the wife who's the pastor, so is it how can a spouse join, or is it just the husband or whoever's the one's employed by the church?
Well, number one, it's the one employed by the church. So the pastor, husband, man or wife, can be a member of the plan. The spouse can join if the spouse receives compensation from the church. And so that always comes up. And I know, again, I lived in a preacher's household growing up. And I know that this is not just one person does all the work and the spouse just goes on and enjoys life. It's a joint effort at all times. And one of the things that I've suggested is, well, let's assume it's a traditional type situation where the man is the pastor and the lady is in charge of the, we used to call them willing workers, ladies auxiliary, or whatever we call them now, the ladies ministries of the church. Well, every year the ladies ministries provides the spouse $500 gift at Christmas or something like that. What if you just put the spouse on the payroll of the church and she only got $50 a month? That's $600 a year. She could be taking that $600 and putting it all into a retirement account in her name. And wow. So I think you just need to be creative in the way you do that. Some churches bless the spouse a lot with gifts at, different times of the year, anniversaries, birthdays, Christmas, Mother's Day, other things. Take that money and turn it into a regular contribution to that person so they can put it into their retirement account and prepare for the future.
Brother Art, you getting me in trouble. My wife is just, yeah, and I'm telling it, honey, because I'm in trouble. So once again, everyone, this has been a wonderful talk with Brother Art Rhodes. And he went from preaching to middling. And so
You got to remember, Bishop, I am always on Millicent's side.
I see that.
Lady Pelt and I are tight. I'm going to always be on her side.
One of the things that as this conversation has moved, you have shared the 6 months savings. You're saying, listen, how we might want to have, if you're bivocational, to do the matching in the 401k, and then we still have the 403b. But one of the things I've been hearing now, and as a matter of fact, it's been a conversation just today, the program that we have a fixed fund thing, but then we have like a little mutual fund thing. Can you explain that? Because someone asked, what's the rate that the fixed fund is getting, and how does one allocate their funds if they become part of the benefits board?
And that's, again, wonderful question. We offer at the benefits board 4 fund options, or 4 investment options. Now, if you're investing in a 401 at an employer, particularly a large employer, you may have 50 or 60 options to invest there. What we have found, and what's been found across the financial community, is that most people only invest in 2 or 3 different funds. And so what we have tried to do at the benefits board is create some simple options that are easily explainable. And so now let me see if I can explain them to you. We have what is called the trustees fund. That is our fixed income account. That fund is invested in things that have a fixed return. You don't have all the fluctuation that you would have in the stock market. Now, there is some fluctuation, but it's not the craziness that you see in the stock market. So the fixed income fund is called our trustees fund. And hold on to your hats, because if you've tried to do a CD lately, you found out that you almost have to pay your bank to keep your money. But the trustees fund, again, fixed return account, that means it's the least risky of all of our funds. It is currently paying 4% return, 4%. Now, when I say that in this environment, people are like, no way, you can't be doing that. But our investments, again, look long-term. We're not looking at what's going to happen today or tomorrow. We're looking at 30 and 40 years out into the future. And that's what we look at every day. But our trustees fund, least risky, pays 4%. The other 3 funds that we offer are called equity funds or stock funds. So they are investing in the stock market. So you say, I want a percentage of my money to go into our next fund, and that would be the next riskiest fund, would be our large cap fund, our large capitalization. That means you're investing in the big funds. These funds are the big companies. They're the Walmarts, the Exxons, everybody else of the world. They are not, there's no load on those funds. There's no front load or back load, nothing of that nature. These funds operate as basically as private mutual funds. And the reason that we keep them private is because we screen those funds to make sure you're not buying liquor, gaming, abortion services. I'm forgetting all the things that we screen out, but we screen out all the sin stocks out of those funds. And so we tell a manager, you can't buy any of those things. We want a fund that's run based upon our beliefs and our values in the Church of God. Now, interestingly enough, our funds historically have performed as well or better than those companies that are buying the tobacco companies, the alcohol companies, and others. So you don't lose anything by doing that normally. And again, over a long period of time, there are short periods of time where a tobacco company or something like that may spike the return. But over a long period of time, you don't lose anything. So we got trustees fund. Our next riskiest would be large cap. That's the big companies of the world. These are companies that have at least $10 billion worth of capitalization and above. And it's all the big folks. It's the Apples, the Microsofts, the Amazons, all of those names that you would know. The third option that we offer is called a small cap manager. And these small cap managers are, they are dealing in companies that are not the mom and pop companies of the world, but they are dealing in the companies that manage between $200 million worth of assets and $10 billion worth of assets. And you would recognize some of the names. There's companies like Payless Shoes and other companies like that. They are a little bit more risky than the large cap funds because small caps, generally smaller companies don't have all the cash that the big companies have, so a little bit more risky. And then the final fund that we offer is an international fund. It is 85% invested, at least 85%, let me clarify that, at least 85% invested in international developed markets. So you're going to see Canada, Europe, and other countries like that. No more than 15% of that fund can be invested in what is called emerging markets or the new markets of the world. The new markets would be places like Brazil, Russia, China. Those are the big ones. So most of those funds are invested in, Germany or United Kingdom or places like that. The interesting thing is you would know a lot of those companies, and you can see them on our website. If you go to benefitsboard.com and just click on investments, you can pull up a fact sheet on each one of these funds and look at them. You can see the top holdings and all that. But in that international fund, you'll find companies like Nestle, Volkswagen, some of those companies that you are very familiar with. Almost probably as familiar as you are with some in the large cap. For instance, Shell Oil Company is in that group. And most people don't realize that Shell Oil Company is a Dutch-owned company. But we see them on every corner, but it's an international company, and you'll see them in that group. International, by far, is the most risky of all of our funds. So I've kind of listed them in order of risk: trustees fund, large cap, small cap, and then the international fund. And the international fund is risky because you have two things there. You have not only stock that are moving up and down, but you have currency, meaning that the dollar, the strength of the dollar, strong or weak dollar, also impacts, because if you buy in the German market, you're buying in the euro currency, and then the price of the euro versus the dollar as it gets converted back could impact. So you could have a strong stock, but the currency could move against you. So it's a little bit more risky because of that. Again, we've got fact sheets on our website. It shows, those fact sheets show the most recent month return. So you can see now how well those funds did in May. They get updated every month. You can see how well the fund has done year to date, how well the fund does each quarter, and then you can see 3-year, 5-year, and 7-year returns. So you can look back long term. And what I would suggest as you look at those funds and make decisions, and you can access those as you're joining the plan, is make decisions on longer term returns. Don't just chase what happened last month or even last year. Our large cap fund last year was over 30% return. Well, that's all well and good, but what happened in March? Life doesn't, 2020 hindsight is wonderful, but you got to look at what's happening in a longer period of time, not just 1 year back, but look back 7 years or so, and you can see all that data on our website.
Another question that just came up, a good question, and it's, let me go make sure I'm reading it right. It says, we are, let me go back. we are trying to ensure to help a younger generation understand how to do investment or money management. What percentage would you then maybe give to a parent trying to teach a child that should be in insurance, savings, and investment? And before you even ask that, it's a question that's come up to me literally just this past week. And this is just your opinion, so I want to be clear. Anything Art says, don't get Art in trouble, don't get me in trouble. There's been a push for how people approach insurance, that maybe you shouldn't purchase insurance, or you should purchase a certain type of insurance, and money that you would have put in life insurance that you ought to put into investments. And it seems to be coming around again. So kind of help us, that's one. And then we'll talk about the percentage later. But how should one manage this insurance question? Because I never thought about it. And I'm old enough to leave here, but I don't know if that's a question. I know it's a question that's sometimes on the minds of our ministers.
Okay, let's talk about, I'll kind of address all those real quick. Number one, how much should you be investing? I've got a 26-year-old son and a almost 23-year-old daughter. And my encouragement to them is to try to invest a minimum of 10% of their income for retirement, for long-term. Now, 10% long-term, 5% short-term, meaning save for a house, save for other things. The interesting thing is some people save for a house but don't save for retirement. But think about this, you can borrow money for a house, you can't borrow money for retirement. So
wow, I never thought about that.
You gotta make sure that you know what you're doing here and begin to save early on. Now, I will just tell you, my son, he's saving 15% for retirement and probably another 10% for short-term issues. My daughter, if I can get her to save 2%, we're doing good. She lives for the now. And don't tell anybody I said this, but she's more kin to my wife than me, I think. And if y'all tell anybody now, I'm gonna be in serious trouble. But anyway.
Hey man, me and your daughter are family, so leave my sister alone.
I hear you. But let's jump. So that's some basic guidelines. If you're not doing that, or your children's not doing that, don't turn them out of the family or anything like that. Just encourage them, because just remember things that you can borrow money for some things and pay those off. It's maybe not the best approach, but you cannot borrow money for retirement. And so you need to be saving for that, and don't anticipate that Social Security is going to be able to take care of you in the lifestyle you've become accustomed to, because it's not. Now, the insurance issue is one that continuously comes up. And so I think what we have to do in the insurance issue is step back one step and say, number one, do I need insurance? And the answer is, most people, the answer to that question is absolutely yes. Now, there are a few people that don't need insurance any longer. And those are people who have reached an age where they no longer have any children in their household. They have a good retirement account, and they have sufficient savings in the bank to cover burial expenses and other things that they might need if something were to happen to them. So if you've got $1.5 million, $2 million retirement account, and you've got a couple $100,000 of cash in the bank, why do you need insurance? It's just an added cost that's no benefit. You are basically self-insured at that point. Now, on the other hand, if you have a house and you got a $300,000 or $400,000 or $500,000 mortgage on that house, and you got $50,000 in the bank, and you don't have some type of credit life insurance, or better, a term policy to cover the value of that house, you are living in financial danger, because if you don't have enough insurance to cover that house, and you're the primary breadwinner, husband or wife, and you pass away, what is your spouse going to do? They're now going to be, they can't pay for the house. They got to move somewhere else, and they can't afford to do that. So you need at least enough insurance to cover that, cover your burial, and provide a new starting point for your spouse. My recommendation.
Millicent, hold on, Art. Let me just say this right now. I want Millicent to start real well, but hold on. I don't know if I want her to start. I don't know how much starting point I want her to have. I just need to throw that in there. Okay, go back. God bless you.
We're gonna take care of Millicent, Brother Pelt. When you're gone, we're gonna provide her with some, great retirement account. Let her go around the world with her boyfriend, whatever. I'm kidding. On the life insurance question, though, most people should have at least 10 times their annual income in life insurance. Okay? Simple example. If you make $100,000 a year, you should have at least $1 million policy. Okay? If you make $50,000 a year, you should have a $500,000 policy minimum. Now, I say minimum simply because there's some things that could require that you have more insurance, or there's some things that could require or mandate that you don't need that much insurance. So for instance, if you're making $50,000 a year and you have, 3 children, and all those children are, 10 years of age or younger, then you may need more than $500,000 because you need to be able to take care of those children, because if something happens to you, your spouse may not be able to go back to work or go to work, and they're going to need some care to take care of those children to get them grown where they can go out on their own. On the other hand, if you're making $50,000 and you don't have any children or they're out of the house now, you may not quite need that much. So there's some mitigating factors, but again, 10 times is kind of the normal rules. 10 to 12 times is kind of the rule that you'll hear from, whether it's Dave Ramsey or Susie or whoever out there. They're going to give you that same thing. And I did see a question pop up about whether we are talking about term insurance or whether we're talking about some type of whole life or something of that nature. Most people are going to be better off with term insurance because they can buy more term insurance than they can whole life type insurance. And the difference is this: a term life insurance is good as long as you pay the premium. A whole life policy adds up some cash value to it. The problem is that most people cannot afford, and again, most pastors, ministers, cannot afford enough whole life insurance to cover their insurance needs. A $500,000 whole life insurance policy will cost you a pretty penny every month, where if you're 50 years old, you can probably get a $500,000 whole life insurance policy for maybe less than $1,000 a year, less than $100 a month. And so generally, I suggest term over whole life because you can get more insurance. There is some investment qualities that come with whole life policies, but what I would suggest is buy a term policy to cover your insurance needs and then put money into a retirement account to cover your investment needs. So a whole life, again, has life insurance and investment tied together. I think you get a better deal by having investments and term life. That's my thoughts. And again, you're going to have different folks tell you different things. That just has tended to work for me in me helping folks through the years. Now, let me just say one other thing, and this often gets overlooked. Let's go back and use that traditional situation, and don't get mad at me for doing this, but the traditional situation where the husband is the primary breadwinner and the wife may be a stay-at-home mom, or she may have a part-time job. The question is, in that situation, well, we don't need insurance on her. Oh, yes, you do. you need a good insurance policy on her. Because what happens, the husband may have a really good job, but what happens when, the spouse, the lady comes down with cancer or has a heart attack or something of that nature, and she is not in the picture, and you've got 3 or 4 snotty-nosed children running around the house. The husband now has got to provide for those children, provide a caregiver for them, take care of them to get them so he can still work. And so it's critically important that you have insurance on your spouse as well. Even though she may not be in a typical job, you'll be surprised how much she's doing if she's not there.
That's good work.
I tell you what, just tell her to go away a week, and you take care of things, and you'll go buy her insurance policy quick.
Oh, that's a great. Listen, someone asked the question: do you recommend, or do you have any suggestions relative to reputable term life carriers?
There are several out there that are primarily web-based companies that you can call up, and they represent not just one company, but they represent a lot of different companies. And that's what I've done over the years. I've just used one of those companies. The one I use, again, this is free advertisement for them. It's called Term Pro, TERMPRO. I don't get anything from endorsing them, and they wouldn't know me if you told them my name. But I have used them for my policy, my wife's policy, and for my children's policy.
Wow. Someone just put up there as well. I never thought about this. Even caregivers having policies, the children who are caregivers to the parents. That leads me to this question. Is there insurance for catastrophic situations? And what has been your recommendations? Should we get into that? Should we not? How do we kind of navigate that as well? Because most people are saying a medical situation can bankrupt
you. Yeah. And Bishop, you can get insurance for everything. You can insure your dog if you want to.
Well, look, listen, I can tell you, I found that out. I just put mine down, but I promise you, I want to go. I used to ask them, hey, look here, y'all ain't got some kind of insurance for this dog? Because y'all is getting me. Y'all is getting me real good here.
Yep. You can get insurance for everything, but a couple of things that, there's all these cancer insurance policies and all that. I generally don't recommend those kind of policies unless, everybody in your family has died of cancer. Then you probably ought to go get you a policy like that, because it does provide some additional coverage. And generally, those one-off type policies are rather inexpensive. I generally just encourage you to have a good term policy that will cover everything. 2 things, though, that I would recommend, and that is that for anybody that's listening today that's in my age category, and that means if you're 58 to, say, 65 or so, you should be talking to someone about a long-term care policy for yourself. That means buying insurance to cover you if you were to become incapacitated and had to go either into assisted living or into a nursing home. That is it's critical insurance. It is insurance that will save you. You talked about bankruptcy, Bishop. It's insurance that will save your family and your inheritance if you have that type of insurance. So it's, and again, these policies, if you buy them in that age category before you get too old, generally you want to have that policy, that long-term care policy purchased before you're in your early 60s, 62, 63 years of age. You want to have it purchased before then. You can buy those policies relatively cheap, I say that. But just think about this. Today in this country, The average nursing home monthly cost is about $6,500 a month. You can get a policy for a whole lot less than that per year for you or your spouse. It would be 1 month premium to pay to go in a nursing home. And I'm dealing with this in my family with my wife's mother who's in a nursing home. $6,700 a month is what her base amount is that is having to be paid. So it can eat up an inheritance quickly. The other things that you should be thinking about during this period of time is making sure that your beneficiaries are updated, that you know who's going to get your life insurance. You may have bought your policy 10 years ago and you had your spouse listed on there and now your spouse is deceased. Update those beneficiaries. Those things are critical to make sure that you've got updated.
You know, and again, I appreciate this. One of the things that we are doing here, we're about to let you go. As you know, Brother Art Rhodes is, again, the CEO and Executive Director of our Benefits Board. He has done a phenomenal job. I want you to know, if you want to contact him, you can see right on the screen, info@benefitsboard.com. You can go there as well to sign up. He has shared wonderful wealth of information. Art is a great guy, and I'll tell you, I know he's really busy, but if you reach out to him through email, he'll do a wonderful job. And I really do appreciate Art. I appreciate his wisdom, his guidance. Even today, Art, I was joking, but something you just said again today just kind of reminded me of some things I need to make sure that we do at my home. Now, you mentioned Term Pro is one. Do you have a website that you might do for the long-term care policy? Can you get a long-term care policy through Term Pro as well? Is there another recommendation you might have as well?
You know, Bishop, I am not sure if they offer the long-term care policies or not, but what I would always suggest is just talk with an independent broker that represents multiple companies so you can see what the different companies offer, what their exclusion period is, particularly like on a long-term care policy. Exclusion period basically says, we're not going to pick up for the first 6 months or something like that, and then from there on, we'll pay 80% or 90% or something like that. Just make sure you follow through and know what those are and compare them side by side. So an independent insurance company can do that for you. They can look at every different company out there and say, this is what each one's offering. These are what the premiums are. And to be perfectly honest, some companies, they really are stressing just trying to sell insurance to 30-year-olds, and then there's some that are trying to sell insurance to 60-year-olds. Mm-hmm. And so you can find Bishop Pelt, as young as he is, he can get good insurance, and then an old man like me, I'm out there struggling to try to get insurance.
Man, I really, 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 really appreciate you taking time. I know you have other things you've been doing today, and you have some other things you do this afternoon. To the Zoom call and to the Facebook Live, again, you can reach out to Brother Art. He's right there in Cleveland. We appreciate him. We appreciate his gift to the body. But I would want this one last, Brother Art, you know, and I want the body to know, Brother Art holds the note to our wonderful campground. And what's the address if they want to make a donation to the campground principal? So if they want to make a donation today, what's the address they need to make that to? As a matter of fact, let me ask you a question. Have you guys started doing online payment? Yeah.
We have online payment for both our mortgages and online contributions for our retirement account. You don't ever have to mail it. You don't have to do anything. Just send your money every month. We can do that.
Now, I know I forgot to get that information, but can you tell them how they might send something toward the campground debt reduction plan? As you know, we are not having convention this year. And so if you want to bless this segment, I'm asking you that every donation goes straight to him. He knows it's going to be applied to principal. And so, Brother Art, tell them how they can give a wonderful donation to the principal reduction.
All you need to do is send it to Church Loan Fund, Post Office Box 4608, 4608, Cleveland, Tennessee, 37320. And just make sure that on your check you put loan reduction,
Florida Cocoa.
Florida Cocoa,
Yes, sir.
and it will get applied directly to the principal payment of the Florida Cocoa campground. Again, that's Church Loan Fund, Post Office Box 4608, 4608, Cleveland, Tennessee, 37320.
Man, I really, really appreciate you being with us today. And again, I hope everyone is enjoying these Teaching Tuesdays. You guys have been giving me some great comments. This has been another phenomenal Teaching Tuesday, and Art Rose has done a great job. Just in case people say, well, Bishop, I missed Teaching Tuesday, I missed this one, I got in late to this one. All of our Teaching Tuesdays are being uploaded on our YouTube channel. We'll make sure that information gets out. I want to say thank you to Minister Demetrius Presley, who handles all this technical stuff. And so he's making sure all of these wonderful Teaching Tuesdays is uploaded to YouTube so that you can go back and check it out. I hope that you've enjoyed it. Again, I want you to know if there's a subject matter that you want me to try to discuss or somebody you want me to try to find, let me know. We'll try our best to reach out to them as we've done with Brother Art Rose. Brother Art, I want you to know we appreciate you being here today. We also appreciate what you do for the Church of God. Thank you. You're helping my money grow. You're helping me grow my money. And I really do appreciate you. And I'm praying that the Lord will continue to bless you and keep you. And that you'll truly have many more years. I didn't realize it was 21 years, but that you have many more years to do what you're doing. You are truly a gift to the body. And we thank you. To everyone else.
Thank you, Bishop, so much.
Amen, no problem. Listen, I see the wonderful comments on Facebook Live. I see those of you on Zoom call. I just want to remind you that next week we will be here again, 1 o'clock. Another wonderful, wonderful time. Next week's talk will be with Dr. Hugh Nelson out of New York and his son. So it's going to be a great time. So join us again on next week. As we always say here, listen, I'm praying for you. Will you pray for me? I won't harm you with words from my mouth. You guys are so important to me, and I need you to survive. And we just want to be Coco strong all day long. Art, love you, man. Love you, everyone. Have a great day.
Love you too, Bishop. Bye-bye.
Bishop.